Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about being heavy-headed, and the way that I think about that is two ways. So physically heavy-headed with that picture, and I'll just go ahead and pull that picture up so we can talk about that real quick. And so physically and then physiologically heavy-headed, right? And this is a particularly good week to consider
Definitely.
that one, I think. So let me get the right thing open here. Share this screen. Okay, so this photo right here. And I'm sorry I don't have it bigger on the screen, but I guess we can all see that. This is something that I love to use with people and talk about it. So I'm going to go ahead and switch this over to preview mode, because this is where we're going to load this video up when we're done anyway. So this is the back end of our dashboard here. So let me change the view. I might be able to get it bigger. Come on. Oh gosh, why did that happen? Bear with me for one moment. I'm sorry.
I'm fine.
Technical difficulties. Go here. I see a lot of people in my practice, and talk to a lot of people that they get headaches. We get the knots in the neck. We get this sort of swoop thing here that creates a lot of compression. What that can do is lead to nerve impingement even at its kind of worst state. And overall, just really a cause of muscular soreness, and can be joint compression. We can get some discs that get out of alignment. And I think the best thing that I have found to help people to see that is to look at a photo like this. And so literally, how relatively heavy is your head, right? Yeah. So when it's lined up above the spine, and I don't know if these numbers are completely accurate, it doesn't really matter, right? But if your head is lined up over your spine with the natural curvature of the spine, it's, this says 12 pounds. I usually say to people, it's almost relatively weightless if it's balancing over an upright spine. The more we come forward, it's just simple physics, right? So the more forward your head is over that spine, the heavier it relatively becomes. And I'm going to switch over to that anatomy app here in a second, and we'll look at some of the muscles involved in that real quick. I do think it helps to see that. I always think it helps to see that. So just kind of, we'll get this picture in our heads, and that is real. You really physically, your head gets heavier the more forward it is. And now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the structures that are involved with that.
Yeah.
So here's our friendly little guy here. Let's go down. There we go. So the front, this is the front of the neck. Can you make that out pretty well?
Yeah,
okay.
I can see it.
Okay. So we're going to flip this around. Okay. And if you picture that photo that we were just looking at. And so this guy's pretty upright, but look at these muscles, that the more curve you have in your upper spine, the more forward your head is. Look at how hard all of these muscles have to work. Particularly look at these guys right here. And I think this is an easy one to visualize. These are the splenius muscles. This is the levator scapula. This is a huge one. This is where if someone or you touch right here and you're like, oh, there's like a, oh my God, I just wish I could stay on that all day long. So I'm going to show you what's underneath that. So that, and we're going to take this this muscle away here. Hopefully that's the one that's going to go away. Perfect. Okay. So these muscles right here that are attached to the top, to your skull and the very top of our necks, our cervical spine, one of them comes down and attaches down here into the ribs and the collarbone. These come down and they attach onto the shoulder blade, right? So any kind of posture that has our head forward or we're tense and we're like this is going to shorten all of these muscles. And when muscles remain either on guard because they're holding up our heavy heads, or they're on guard because we're stressed out and we're hiking our shoulders up, then no good blood flow can go through those muscles. And that causes lots of pain, lots of discomfort. And then when we go ahead and we're going to remove some of these other layers, and it's endless, right? Our bodies are made so amazingly. Look at all these different muscles that attach. So this one goes down and that attaches onto the shoulder blade too. It attaches onto some of the ribs. It attaches onto the spine, the cervical spine. We're going to keep removing. Look at these guys. So every degree forward that your head sits, these muscles here are going to be on fire, trying to hold that head up. And then if you picture the circulatory system that all runs through here. So we always think about the nerves, but we don't always also think about the arteries and the veins and the blood that goes through here. So those get pinched too. And there's some really cool, I should have pulled it up, but there's some really cool functional, I'm thinking of this x-ray that I've seen before that it shows the difference between when someone it's of someone who has like an impingement and all this tightness around the shoulders, and you can see when he lifts his arms up that it completely restricts the flow of the blood, and because it is so tight. And that I see that in a lot of different people.
I remember you saying how much higher you can get your arms if your posture is correct. And I remember thinking, I mean, I never used to be able to put my arms right by my ears.
Right.
It has to do with being more open in my, chest.
Exactly. And I'll try to stand where people could see me. Yeah, so what Elizabeth is referring to is when you're like this and you go, this is as far as my arm is going to go because I'm looking down and my spine is folded forward. As soon as I pick that up, I gain 30 degrees of range of motion. Yeah. And so lots of shoulder issues, lots of rotator cuff issues, numbness and tingling down into the hands and the wrist. It kills me when people go in for carpal tunnel surgery, as an example, and nobody has helped them open up their shoulders. Yeah. I've seen research and just in the clinic and in the studio too, but I believe that at least half of the carpal tunnel surgeries that are done could be avoided by looking further up the structure. Yeah. Because it gets blamed on this. And yes, they'll do a test and you'll see that's inflamed. But of course it's going to be inflamed if the blood flow is restricted proximally. Yeah. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I would love to see if we can take away where the actual cervical spine is there.
Let's do it.
Because I see things attaching down further. Okay.
We're going to go to the bare bones, as they say. Okay. And then we'll flip this around so we can kind of get a sense of where we are. Okay. So this, of course, is the back of your head.
Right.
And the spine. And then we're going to flip them around again. And there's the side. Okay. And
so the cervical spine does go in. I mean, it does.
There's a natural curve in the cervical spine.
Curve.
Yes. If you go sideways, there's a natural curve here.
Yeah.
That's supposed to be there. Okay. There's a natural curve in the opposite direction in your thoracic spine.
Yeah.
And then there's the natural lumbar curve in your lower spine.
Yeah.
So like I think if we moved back a little bit, that's normal. Okay. This curve is normal.
Right.
And this curve is normal.
Right.
What we see that those curves become abnormal and too pronounced when we are sitting, when we do too much sitting, when we don't counteract that sitting with movement and strengthening in every direction. Mm-hmm. And so when those become overdone, those curves, what ends up happening is, if you can see my arrow here, right? So if that becomes a really pronounced curve there, then where the spinal cord goes through the canal gets
compressed.
Smaller. Compressed. And same thing here in the neck. When that becomes overpronounced, that canal where the whole cord and then all of the nerves coming off of it, the holes get smaller, just positionally. But you can open them back up.
Yeah.
They're not closed holes. These holes are made by one bone on top of another bone. And it's the angles that they take that close the hole. It's not a bone with a hole drilled through it. It's a movable structure.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Makes perfect sense.
So then we'll go back up here. Why don't we? And let's look at it from the back for a second. So we're going to add the layers of, we're going to add them in. So here we go. So we'll just flip him around so you can see it starts to build. It's like if you're building a model, you know, you secure it close to the bone first. All these little tiny attachments, they have to be attached there. And then as you start to you want your model not to fall over when you let go of it. So then you add more. So then we get all of these other supporting muscles. And I mean, this is so clear, right? If that's forward, how stressed out those muscles are going to be.
Wow.
And how they're going to be. That's why we have these knots, because they're working when they're not supposed to be working. Like this is why dentists and hygienists who are in these awkward positions day after day after day, year after year after year, they have a very high suicide rate, which is one horrible thing. But they also have a very, very high rate of orthopedic and neurological and neurosurgery, because they have sustained these positions for so long that it starts to break down the actual structures.
Yeah.
But for most of us, and I'm just picking on them right now because of the nature of their work, but for most of us, and them too, if we realize these things, then wouldn't you rather wouldn't you rather exercise a little bit and strengthen and change your posture than relying on anything from a Tylenol every day, moving on up to an anti-inflammatory every day, to cortisone, to shots, to surgery? Like, you can reverse wherever you are. There's room to heal again.
Yeah.
I truly believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've talked about this, but I certainly know it because being hypermobile and in the lower part of the spine, being what's it called when you stick out too much.
Yeah, and that's that curvature that we were just talking about.
Yeah,
it's called the lumbar lordosis.
Yeah, it's lordosis.
And that's right. Here it's called the thoracic kyphosis, and then we also have a cervical lordosis. It's just it changes. It's like an S almost.
Yeah.
And to your point, you're exactly right. So we're all born with a different degree of tension in our muscles. You see people that are hypermobile, their knees bow back, they can get into wacky yoga positions, no problem. You know, it's like, oh my God, you're so flexible, which is great. And then you see people on, and that's normal, that's still normal muscle tone. You see people on the other end of the spectrum who've never touched their toes their whole life, and that's just the way they are. They're tighter. That means that their neuromotor thermostat is higher. And someone with more flexibility, their neuromotor thermostat is set lower. But they're all normal.
Yeah.
Now, when we see these kids with cerebral palsy or people with spinal cord injuries, where you see people fixed in these positions, it's because their neuromotor system is on fire, and they can't relax those muscles.
Got it.
And so we're doing that to ourselves when we hold ourselves in these sustained kind of off kilter positions.
Yeah.
I'm not minimizing
obviously,
CP or muscle, MS or Parkinson's or anything like that. But the principles are all the same. I used to work with kids with CP. That was what I did for years when in my 20s. And the same things that help to relax their muscles help to relax a more normal muscle spasm. It's applying the right kind of lengthening. It's weight bearing. It's strengthening. It's touch. It's heat. It's, all these things, the principles still apply. It's just
what's ironic is that I was a very good little girl, except that my mother constantly told me to stand up straight. And it was the only way I could defy her. So I did that.
Yeah.
All the time. And it's taken me a lifetime not a lifetime, but it's taken me years of working with you, etc., to get it back again, to get it straight, because it was just about defying her. It was like my only rebellion.
You know what? That's so well put, because think about this. Now we can jump right into the whole physiology of this. Hi, Jason.
Yeah, he's making applesauce.
Hello.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
Being recorded.
I'm making applesauce.
Okay.
Oh, I wish I could have some.
Yeah.
So what you just said is a great way to shift over just a little bit to the physiological heavy head, right? And sometimes they go together, just like you just said. When we're sad, when we're choose as way to rebel against our mom, when tall girls try to make themselves smaller,
or busty girls try to
cover it up.
Yeah.
When we're feeling unsure of ourselves, we collapse. So being aware of the physiology, what is happening in our brains, what's triggering all of those emotions can trigger a physical response, right? And it's the same thing as a more positive one. Like you've seen those videos of like the power pose, and like you stand like Wonder Woman in the mirror, and you're like upright and tall, and the physiology, that is real. The physiology behind that is so powerful. And so when we start to use our bodies to help heal our emotion triggers, our thresholds, when we start to get that, like when I'm upset, my stomach feels like a knot. When Nicole's upset, she gets tight in her throat. When the girls are upset, they have a different physiological response.
Everybody does it.
Right? Yeah. My neck gets red. Like when we can start to tune in to those triggers, like our bodies can tell us so much about what is really happening in our heads and how in our hearts. And so I think that you really cannot separate our physical health from our emotional health to our social health.
Right.
And one really cool thing, I think, because I work with the body so much and I think about the body so much, is I can see where you can use it for good or evil, almost, right? So if you start to recognize I would encourage anyone watching this to even write down, like, think about when something upsets you. It shouldn't be that hard this week to think about something that is upsetting you. And write down where in your body you feel that, because you will feel it somewhere. There will be a physical sensation that cues you in to this heaviness starting to happen. And it's almost so simple, it's funny almost, that if we tune in when that begins to happen, the more you practice it, the more you can feel it when it starts to happen.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, I'm not talking about pushing your feelings underneath. That's not what we're talking about. But recognizing when we get riled up, you'll feel it in your body first. And when you start to recognize that, you can then use your body to come out of that feeling. And whether it's just, seriously, okay, stretching overhead, doing a few reaches down, breathing, doing a few push-ups on the counter, coming upright, doing that Wonder Woman or Superman pose. You can use your body to help you, because sometimes it's just too hard to use your brain to do it.
Yeah.
And we're so riled up, and it's just much harder. But if we start to use our bodies, it's really powerful. Does that making sense?
Absolutely. And I think a perfect example for me is a typical one is my stomach. But more than that, I've noticed that when I'm riled up, I don't close my mouth when I breathe.
Yes.
And so that book, Breath, I really noticed
it's amazing.
it. Yeah. I noticed
that is a huge one.
Yeah, first thing in the morning, which is when I'm coming out of sleep and, oh my gosh, what's happened in the night? And I start to get the news and I have to literally say to myself, close your mouth.
Yeah. And and you and I, we know why that's important, because we've read this book, Breath, and I'll put that in the notes here.
Yeah.
But that is like the reason why that matters so much, that you can notice that, is because when we breathe through our mouths versus when we breathe through our noses, the oxygen exchange is completely different. The carbon dioxide exchange is completely different. And that physiologically it creates cortisol. When you breathe through your mouth, you are actually increasing your anxiety and creating cortisol, which probably stems back from cavemen fight or flight, that when you were stressed, you needed to breathe through your mouth and get a quick dose of so you could get the hell out of the way and not get eaten by the tiger or whatever it is, right? So we carry all these things with us. So I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is huge. And it reminds me of when I was when I first left my marriage. It was stressful. And so my girls and I moved in with my best friend from childhood and her girls, and it was a wonderful experience. But the reason I'm bringing it up is that when I would be fine. My friend and I got up early, we read, we just sat, we relaxed, and it was great. As soon as I would get in the shower, I would start clearing my throat and coughing. And I never would have, I don't know if I would have realized this myself, but Tina would always say, she calls him Bird, that's my nickname, Bird, what you thinking about? Like, and because I was getting ready to take care of all these things.
I have to go to the next step. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
so
other
that
thing, physiologically, not just about breath, but what you reminded me of is I grew up with 5 brothers, no sisters. My mother was very absent. And so this was about protecting because they poked at me because I was the only girl. Yeah. So it was all about this, trying to keep it all safe. Yeah. So.
And that serves us in the moment.
Yes. But
then it becomes a habit.
Yeah. It's so true.
Right? As anything that serves us in the moment to protect us from some kind of harm, it only serves us in that moment. But then we start to go back to it. It's like drinking. It's like taking drugs. It's like anything, you know?
Things,
yeah. Wow, this is really fun. Yeah, I love talking about
I
this
actually have to go pretty soon in about 10 minutes. So is there any exercise? I'm sure you were getting that. Or any
absolutely
any head, you know, head back, whatever.
Absolutely. So I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and stop this screen share here. And then open this up. Okay, I'm going to take this out into the other room, I think. You know, I could probably just do this right here. Okay. All right. Okay. So, oops, can you see me?
Now, let me see your head. I think your head will be important.
I'm going to have to go into another room.
Yes.
Un momento. Let me put this mask on. And if you have to go, Elizabeth, you can always
I can check
catch
back.
the replay.
Yeah, but I'll watch for now until the quarter off. If I disappear, it's
we head out here.
because of that.
We know why. All right, I'm just going to go to the other side so I can take this mask off.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Here we go.
That's good.
So I'm just going to, you can see me now? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to show a couple of, one thing that a lot of people who have gone to a physical therapist to try to get their posture better. One of the principles that is used a lot in clinical physical therapy is holding positions, right? Like using a wall and coming back and tucking your chin back and holding that position. Now, it's not that I don't think that can be helpful. It can help you find that center.
Right.
But I think it's very one-dimensional in how much it can help you, okay? So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, to stand back there and just get a sense of how far forward you are and where it is to be, what your kind of goal is. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then we're going to have to use some other principles now to attack that. So one thing would be, and I always tell this to people, if it was as easy as saying stand up straight, we'd all be standing up straight.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to use some of those other planes of motion. And so I'm going to use the wall because I think the wall is helpful for this particular thing. You don't have to have the wall, but it's helpful as a backup. So if we find ourselves here, great. Use that as a reminder. That is not your exercise, okay? So what I want people to do is to stand really close to the wall, and you can see me still, and we're going to use this familiar position of crossing the leg over and coming up. Crossing the leg over and coming up. And what I'm doing with my eyes is I'm gazing up, right about here, okay? So if I am upright, I'm going to find my eye line right on the wall, right in front of me, okay? And I'm going to keep my eyes there as I do this movement. Because by keeping my eyes there, I know that I'm not then doing this.
Okay.
I have to gaze up a little bit to do that. And that's one of those little micro things that make that effective. Whereas if your head was going down, it's not as if we're not doing the same thing.
Right. Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So then, of course, you're going to do that here. You're going to find your eye line. You're going to keep your eyes on that spot. As you travel over here, you're going to have to look up a little bit to keep looking at that spot.
Right.
Okay? Then, let's take a little bit of a weight and start to load that. So we've practiced at the wall. We're going to then see if we can do that away from the wall, just like we do in class, okay? But we're not looking down. We're going to find that spot that we found somewhere ahead of us on the wall, and we're going to keep using that gaze. So there's so much has to do with our posture is where our eyes are.
Got it.
So often our eyes are down. So we're going to practice moving with our eyes on a target.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes sense.
Perfect. So we would do that on both sides. I'm going to find something to look at. I'm not going to take my eyes off of it. Then I'm start to strengthen that.
Right.
Okay. Now the other one is another similar one that we do in class. Another principle that we want to use is we want to load to explode out of this posture. Okay. So one way to load, very simply, is to have that foot forward. Go ahead and get into that forward head posture. Okay. Then come up, explode out. We're using our hands. We're using our eyes. I'm looking down at my shoe here. I'm looking up here. Okay.
So not your usual straight back. No.
Oh, we're gonna do the core posture here.
Right.
So you don't have to go that low.
Right.
And we're gonna come out of it.
I got it.
Core posture here. Come out of it and look up. Okay?
Right.
And then the last direction that we've got to hit, we've done some forward and back. We've done our lateral. But to really hit it home, we're going to have to do some rotation. Okay? And follow, unless it makes you dizzy, follow your hand with your eyes. If that is too dizzy, what you could do is just make sure that you're looking up here and you're looking down here. Look up here, look down here. Sometimes it's too much.
Yeah, I get it.
That.
Yeah.
But here you're going to look up, here you're going to look down. Okay?
Got it. I've got to go.
Awesome. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
Okay, I will see you soon.
Sounds good. Bye. All right. So those are the principles that we want to use. Write any questions that you have in the comments. We can talk about this again. There's so much more to talk about with the physicality and the physiology of a heavy head. So I would love to explore this a little bit more with everybody. Let me know what you think.